Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to my set review for Phyrexia All Will Be One. We are here at last with the multicolor cards. This is going to be sort of tying the whole package together. So, without any further ado, let's get this thing started. First up, we have Jorkdeen, first Gold Warden. This is a red and a white legendary creature, human rebel. It is a 2/2. It has trample, and whenever it attacks, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of equipped creatures you control. Then, if its power is 4 or greater, draw a card. So again, we see a very strong equipment payoff, but the equipment in the set are pretty weak. Now, that said, you don't have to pay to equip them, so if you do open this early, and you don't have to pay to equip a lot of the equipment for the first time, right? They just come with something that they're strapped to. So you can theoretically be attacking with this quite quickly, as a 4/4 or more with trample. It works nicely if it is equipped as well. So that's nice. But it's the kind of card I think you have to open early, because the equipment, if you don't have the payoff, they're all pretty subpar. Yeah. Next up, we have Malira, the Living Cure. This is a 2-mana 3/3 legendary creature, human scout. 2-mana 3/3. It is green and white. Sorry, I should be saying that because this is multicolored stuff. They could be whatever color in the world. Just 2 mana doesn't matter. A 2-mana 3/3 is very solid. It says if you would get one or more poison counters, instead you get one poison counter, and you can't get additional poison counters this turn. That is probably going to stop infect kills from getting you. It'll stop a fair bit of toxic, but it's not gonna. The problem with this card is it's not going to stop you from becoming corrupted. Right? It's not going to stop them from getting 2-3 counters. They'll probably be able to get there. Right? So I don't know that ability is necessarily worth all that much. Last ability is Exile Malira, the Living Cure. Choose another target creature or artifact. When it's put into a graveyard from this turn, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Quite nice. Yeah, this is a good card. This is a very solid card. I don't think that first ability is going to do as much as you might think, because a lot of decks, I think, will just care about being able to corrupt you. So that said, a 2-mana 3/3 is great, so don't even hesitate to snap this off. Next up, we have Slaughter Singer. This is a green and a white for a 2/2 Phyrexian Cleric. Toxic 2, whenever another creature you control with toxic attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Okay, so this is a very nice card. Works very well with the mites. Works very well with some of the smaller toxic creatures to, just to push through damage and really put the hurt on your opponent. The body of this card is not super great because in combat it is a grizzly bear. But yeah, it can definitely help your mites put the hurt on more than anything, I think. And then multiples of this will be just fantastic. It's effectively a lord, but only when attacking. so that's something. Next up, we have a Venser, Corpse Puppet. This is a blue and a black for a 1/3 legendary Phyrexian zombie wizard. It has lifelink and toxic 1. Whenever you proliferate, choose 1. If you don't control a creature named the Hollow Sentinel, create the Hollow Sentinel, a legendary 3/3 colorless Phyrexian Golem artifact creature token, or target artifact creature you control gains flying and lifelink until end of turn. This is a very strong card. Do not, like, you can only ever make one golem with this. You can get other golems elsewhere, right? And as long as you don't have this legendary one, you can still make one with this. But giving an artifact creature flying and lifelink is very strong. It is very strong. In limited, if you can reliably proliferate every once per turn, this is the kind of card where if you're proliferating once per turn, that's great. If you're proliferating more than once per turn, this does not get that much additional benefit from that. But this card is very strong, like very strong. Potentially constructed playable. We'll have to see. There might be something you could do with like an artifacty deck and this thing. Maybe like a hardened scales or a hardened scales style deck. The reason I say hardened scales style deck is because that's the sort of the other payoffs, and then you could use this to like jump them and smash your opponent. Not because this cares about hardened scales at all, right? Just proliferate plays nicely with +1/+1 counters, and this jumps, likes to jump big creatures. So that's what I'm saying there. Next up, we have a Voidwing Hybrid. This is a blue and a black, so same as the last card. Creature, Phyrexian Bat. It is a 2/1. It has flying, toxic 1, and whenever you proliferate, or when you proliferate, return Voidwing Hybrid from your graveyard to your hand. This is going to kill people. You can like sort of swing with this with impunity and trade for whatever, and then your opponent kills it and you proliferate and get it back. That's going to be wonderful. This is going to toxic kill people. So yeah, very solid. Very solid card. Next up, we have Bladehold War Whip. This is a 3 mana that is 1 red-white artifact equipment for Mirrodin. When this equipment enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 red rebel and attach this to it. Okay. Equip abilities you activate of other equipment cost 1 less to activate, and equipped creature has double strike. Okay. I don't like it. It's a 3 mana 2/2 with double strike that makes your other prohibitively expensive equipment easier to equip, right? And it's also prohibitively expensive to equip. So if they kill this 2/2, yes, you can maybe in the future pay 5 mana and equip up something. But man, I guess if you have 2 of these, like, it's fantastic, because now it's only 4 to give something double strike, and also, like, all your other equipment is essentially close to 1 mana, close to or 1 mana equips. So that's something. But overall, like, I'm not super thrilled about this card. We'll have to see. I can't imagine that they play tested and left something like this equipment archetype as weak as it is without having to, right? So yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe the payoffs are just so strong that playing these dumpy equipment creatures just becomes reasonable. We'll see. Yeah. Next up, we have Charforger. This is one black, red. It is a 2/3 Phyrexian beast. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 red Phyrexian goblin creature token. Whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put an oil counter on Charforger. Okay. Remove 3 oil counters from Charforger. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So this is a red-black sacrifice payoff. It makes a little bit of sacrifice fodder, and then you can impulse by spending oil counters from it. Yeah, I mean, also playing very nicely with some of the oil stuff, like that 1 mana artifact from red that puts oil counters on it stuff every turn and makes goblins. So that's quite nice. I don't think we saw like a ton of. We saw some sacrifice outlets. They were all very, very safe, in my opinion. But they do exist, so we'll see. The sacrifice archetype might be a little bit like the equipment archetype, where it's a little bit held back. Yeah. I like this card, but I don't think it's on the level of some of the things that we've already seen. Even like the uncommons, right? I don't think this is on the level of like Voidwing Hybrid or the Phyrexian Lord thing. Next up, we have Glissa Sunslayer. This is a 3 mana that is 1, a black, and a green. 3/3 legendary Phyrexian zombie elf. It has first strike and death touch. Good game. Whenever Glissa Sunslayer deals combat damage to a player, choose 1. You draw a card and you lose 1 life. Destroy target enchantment. Remove up to 3 counters from target permanent. A+. Super good card. Amazing. If you open this and you get to play it in your games, you will probably win your pre-release if you're going there. So you'll probably win your draft too if you're drafting. Probably just, it's just crazy good. So next up we have Malcator, Purity Overseer. This is 1 white and a blue for a 1/1 legendary Phyrexian Elephant Wizard. When Malcator, Purity Overseer, enters the battlefield, create a 3/3 colorless Phyrexian Golem artifact creature token. Okay, make a 3/3. So it's effectively 4/4 worth of stats entering the battlefield. At the beginning of your end step, if 3 or more artifacts entered the battlefield under your control this turn, create a 3/3. Yeah, that's solid. That's really solid. Like it's one of the splicers from previous set, but you also just have the upside of like, hey, if you get some more artifacts, make another artifact. That's very good. That's very good. Yeah, and you just at 3 mana, making a 3/3 is reasonable. The additional upside is great. This is the kind of card, though, that you probably have to be playing, like, And again, this is in limited, like that the blue white artifact aggro deck where you can like play several artifacts in a turn, um, and get those additional triggers because otherwise it isn't really gonna, you know, blow anybody out of the water. It's nice. Yeah. Next up, we have Miglaw's Maze Crusher. This is one, a red, and a green for a 4/4 legendary Phyrexian beast. Okay, this is already good. Um, Enters the battlefield with 5 oil counters on it. Okay. Pay 1, remove an oil counter from it. It gains Vigilance and Menace until end of turn. That's. Wow. Pay 2, remove 2 oil counters from it. It gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Okay. Just more. And pay 3, remove 3 oil counters from it. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Yeah. This card's bonkers. Just bonkers. If you open it, have fun. It's just really, really good. Next up, we have Tainted Observer. This is a 3 mana. That is 1, a green, and a blue. 2/3 Phyrexian Bird. Okay. Alright. You know? It's a little odd looking for a bird, but okay. We have a flying toxic 1, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2. If you do, proliferate. Probably a little slow, but very nice. This is once you get this is inevitable. This is an inevitable card. It has a lot of value stapled to it. So essentially, like flying toxic 1 means you are probably going to get a poison counter on your opponent from this. And then the proliferate means that once your opponent has a poison counter, this is going to provide inevitability. It is going to kill your opponent because you're just going to be giving them poison counters by playing your creatures. Yes, you'll be paying an additional tax, but if you're pushing them closer to death, as long as you can like hold your ground, it doesn't matter that you're overpaying, right? You can play defensively with this, play smaller creatures and overpay for them once you've got a poison counter on your opponent, and you should be fine. You should be fine. Like, it will inevitably kill them. Not to mention like all the other proliferate synergies that you could have that are just crazy good. Putting like oil counters on stuff, and like the one that becomes a 3/3 unblockable or whatever in blue. That'll be quite good to get your third counter on there for just the low cost of playing a creature. So quite nice. Next up, we have Tyvar, Jubilant Brawler. This is one, a black and a green for a legendary planeswalker. It enters with 3 loyalty, and it says you may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste. This does not give your creatures haste. It allows them to activate abilities, specifically tap abilities, on the turn they come into play. So this is kind of like crazy good for like those monodorky elf decks and stuff, because you can just like, okay, I'm gonna play my elf, I'm gonna tap it for green and play another elf, I'm gonna tap it for green and play another elf, so on and so forth until you are empty-handed and all your elves are on the battlefield, and then your opponent plays a farewell and you cry. But yeah, it's very nice there because you can just like really quickly pop off with it, and deploy a board full of mana dorks very, very quickly. There's not much other use for it. Like, there are some other uses, obviously, but those are more on niche, sort of really specific creatures that do something crazy good when they get to tap. Um, the only one I can think of right now that's sort of like that is, and it's sort of a mana dork too, is the 2 mana 1/2 that taps and you sacrifice 2 creatures and drain your opponent and draw a card and stuff. That's very good with Tyvar. It's not in this set, so it doesn't matter for limited. That is a constructed consideration. In here, we didn't see a ton of tap abilities. There were some. There were a couple of mana dorks in green, so this does accelerate those quite a bit. But I don't think that static is super relevant because it doesn't actually give your creatures haste. It has 2 abilities. It has +1 on tap up to 1 target creature. Okay, so very nice with that first ability that you can like tap stuff. Ridiculous with a card that taps for multiple mana, like an Elvish Archdruid in Constructed. So quite good there. I don't know that it's worth going into black, but who knows? Maybe they've been trying to push, green black elves for forever, but it's still a mono green archetype for the most part. And then the last ability is -2, mill 3 cards, then you may return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Yeah, same deal, like very elfy. That is kind of where Tyvar came from, so being Kaldheim and sort of a tribal planeswalker there as well. So yeah, an interesting one. I don't know that it's necessarily going to do a ton for you in limited, but it's there. The +1 I think is quite nice in limited, on just untapping your creature, giving it pseudo vigilance more than anything. Otherwise, I don't know that it's gonna, again, blow people out of the water. This is sort of a rare that I'm not as happy to open. But it's reasonable. Next up, we have Cephalopod Sentry. This is a 4 mana card. It is 2, a white and a blue, for a star 5 artifact creature, Phyrexian Squid. It has flying, and its power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. Again, like this blue-white aggro flying circus build with like artifacts and stuff. I think it's going to be solid. I think this card is going to be a big flying beater a lot of the time, and your opponent is going to go, this will do normal damage, but it will kill your opponent quite quickly. I think having like 3 artifacts on the battlefield is not unreasonable, and then having like 4 or 5 on the battlefield is also a definite possibility with this card. So I would be very happy with the Sentry. Next up, we have Azuri, Stalker of Spheres. This is a 4 mana card. It is 2, a green and a blue, for a 3/3 legendary Phyrexian elf warrior. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 3 if you do proliferate twice, and whenever you proliferate, draw a card. So this essentially plays as a 7 mana late game payoff for proliferate, or you can play it early and then hope your other proliferate stuff can now all your other proliferate stuff cantrips, which is pretty nice. That's pretty powerful. Whenever you proliferate, draw a card is a very powerful ability. I don't know how much you're going to want to play this for 7. That seems a little steep, but this card is probably very good, even if you're only playing it for the 4. And if you're able to play it for the 7, if you're able to take that time and play it for that higher mana cost, then whew, you're going to the moon. Enjoy it. Yeah. Next up, we have Kaito, Dancing Shadow. This is a 4 mana that is 2, a blue and a black. Planeswalker, enters with 3 loyalty. And it says, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may return one of them to its owner's hand. If you do, you may activate loyalty abilities of Kaito twice this turn rather than only once. Okay, that's nice. Let's see what those loyalty abilities are, because that's what matters here. +1, up to 1 target creature can't attack or block until your next turn. Solid. 0, draw a card. Excellent. -2, create a 2/2 colorless drone artifact creature token with Death Touch, and when this creature leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Nice. Very nice. Excuse my stomach. A little hungry here. This is a very good card. All 3 of its abilities are solid. You know, the +1 is actually like a pseudo removal. The 0 is draw a card, which is ridiculous. Like, just draw a card every turn. Potentially draw 2 cards is very, very good. And then the creature it creates is also solid. Like a 2/2, the 2/2 drone with that, like a 2/2 with Death Touch would be fine, and then they gave it an additional ability on top of that. So, yeah, good card, very good card. Next up, we have Kethek, Crucible Goliath. This is a 4 mana card. It costs 2, a black and a red, for a 4/4 legendary Phyrexian beast. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary creature card with lesser mana value. Put it on the battlefield, then the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This is like a 4 mana 4/4 is fine and limited. The Chaos Warp style effects, they love to design them. They're never good. They clearly like tried to make this so that it couldn't hit. Like, if you're running a deck with multiples, it's not terrible. Like, you can run a deck with multiples of this and not worry about like getting a dead flip because you flipped up a Kethek. But I don't think it's gonna matter because the effect is just not good enough on its own. Right, this is a sacrifice outlet that wants you to sacrifice big things, and then you get something that's somewhat smaller. Yeah, I just don't think it's good enough. Like, your stuff has to have death triggers, and then it has to have death triggers, and then it has to flip into something that's relevant on top of that. So I don't think this is a good card. Next up, we have Nahiri, the Unforgiving. This is a 4 mana that is 1 red Phyrexian red-white hybrid, white. So, yeah, one of the complicated, the complicated mana cost from the original sort of when completed was first previewed or teased. It is a legendary planeswalker, Nahiri. It enters with 5 loyalty, of course, adjusted by the completed mechanic. It has +1 until your next turn. Up to 1 target creature attacks a player each combat if able. Very strange ability. It's designed to protect itself, I guess. +1, discard a card, then draw a card. Okay. Solid. And 0, exile target creature or equipment card with mana value less than Nahiri's loyalty from your graveyard. Create a token as a copy of it. That token gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. Okay. So, in Limited, this is going to be reanimating, making 2/2s essentially with that 0 ability. It's going to reanimate your equipment, creature things, the Formiridan cards that come in and make a creature, and then those are the equipment's going to go away. The creature's going to stick around. And constructed, this will be making little creatures, little powerful, mean creatures. Ooh, hammer time. Oh my god. Yeah, so this is a card that is gonna actually be good for. I think 3 mana is maybe a bit much though, for hammer time. Um, and maybe I'm thinking Magical Christmas Land, where like you play this for 3, you 0, you make a hammer from your graveyard, and you have the Zagarda's aid to slap it on another creature. Um, or you can like zero it for a pure steel paladin that got removed earlier, so that you can just equip your hammer and swing with impunity. Um, yeah, I think it will probably be played as a one of, or maybe two of in Hammer Time. It's a very cool card. Like the +1, the second +1, because it has two +1s. The discard card, draw card is nice for putting the things in your graveyard that you want to reanimate with Nahiri, which is quite nice. So you don't actually have to get it through the battlefield necessarily to play it with Nahiri. Actually, interesting, because you could also, um, maybe I'm thinking a little farther back here, but like you could, this could work with like Asmore in a cookbook. Yeah, because like the +1, discard a card, draw a card. Um, Allows you to play Asmore, and then the 0 can like reanimate Asmore from the bin, which might be easier than, well, probably isn't easier than playing it, but you know what I mean. Uh, yeah, that seems like an interesting planeswalker. It's definitely got a lot of implications. Um, I would not sleep on this card. Like it's doing more than it looks like it's doing. Like the zero ability looks dumb. Like who wants to reanimate an equipment with for a single turn? But reanimating small creatures is important, and the the multiple plus ones can definitely do some stuff. It can generate you some real card advantage. Yeah, I like it. I like it. Next up, we have a Necrogen Rot Priest. This is 4 mana again. It is 2 colorless, a green and a black, for a 1/5 Phyrexian Zombie Cleric. Um, it has Toxic 2. Whenever a creature you control with Toxic deals combat damage to a player, that player gets an additional poison counter, so an effective Toxic 3 on this, and then just amplifying the Toxic on all your other stuff, which Toxic numbers are generally pretty low, so adding 1 is very strong. I'm not sure exactly how the rules work. No, I think this is a triggered ability, and Toxic is a the way that Toxic is worded. Toxic is a static ability. It just happens. It does not use the stack. There's no responding to getting the the poison counters from Toxic. You can respond to the poison counter, the additional poison counter that the Rot Priest would try to put on you. But basically, once damage happens, if something is like toxic, Toxic 2 or whatever, Toxic 3, once damage happens, they have the 3 poison counters. There is no opportunity for them between damage and when they get the poison counters. There's no space there. Um, so what I'm trying to get at here is toxic stacking is actually stacking. So if you have the green card that can pay 3 and give creatures with toxic an additional toxic 1, um, it's not. It actually is functionally, they get toxic +1, right? So they have toxic 3 instead of toxic 4, or what have you. This is a trigger. I don't know how important that is. Like, it's probably not that important. But and its last ability is 1 black green. Target creature you control with toxic gains death touch until end of turn. Excellent. Okay, I was wondering how you're getting through this with this 1/5 body, but give it death touch. That's solid. You could just guaranteed get some. Again, this is again gonna kill people with poison, forcing through those poisonous attacks or making them trade extremely poorly. Next up, we have Rhea Ivor, Bane of Bladehold. This is 4 mana again. It is 2, a white and a black, for a 3/4 legendary Phyrexian Knight. It has Battle Cry. Whenever this attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. At the beginning of combat on your turn, the next time target creature would deal combat damage to 1 or more players this combat, prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, create that many 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. Holy crap, that's a lot of text for an ability that says exchange the damage on one of your creatures for mites. Um, Yeah. Exchange the damage on one of your creatures for mites. And then battle cry. So this is trying to go wide. You're probably going to like choose one of your mites that you're attacking with, and say that one, it's not going to poison you now, but it will give me 2 mites if it hits you. So you kind of have to block that one, and then all my other mites are getting in for like solid damage. I don't really, unless you have a flyer or something. So if you were like in an Esper deck and had a flyer like this Cephalopod Sentry, that would be kind of crazy because you would make a lot of mites and this thing's power would get real big. And your opponent would die in every way possible very, very quickly. I think this card is a wall of text, and enough of a wall of text that people are not going to understand how it works. And they're going to make a lot of mistakes with this card. People are going to make a lot of mistakes with this card. If you understand this card, you will be able to leverage that to your advantage in limited events with it. I think this... I don't think the effect is like really all that good either, but you'll definitely be able to leverage it to your advantage. The fact that people are not going to be able to understand what this card does. It's okay, but I think its complexity is its biggest advantage or disadvantage, right? People are going to play it wrong so much. Next up, we have Serum Core Chimera. This is a 4-mana card again. It is 2, a blue, and a red for a 2/4 Phyrexian Chimera. It has flying, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on Serum Core Chimera. You can then you can also remove 3 oil counters from it, draw a card, then you may discard a non-land card. When you discard a card this way, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Activate only as a sorcery. So sorcery speed hurts this, but otherwise, like, solid card. You don't have to discard a card, so you can, again, this is like a wall of text that, like, boggles the mind. Like, it's very, very flexible. It's a 2/4 flyer, so that's decent. And then, like, remove 3 oil counters, either lightning bolt, loot and lightning bolt, or just draw is very good. It's a very good card. Be very happy if you get this card and get to play it early. Next up, we have Luca, Bound to Ruin. This is another completed planeswalker, so it's a 4 or 5 mana cost. It is 2, a red, a green, and a Phyrexian hybrid of red and green. For a 5 loyalty planeswalker. Like I said, it has the completed mechanic, so you can play it as a 4 mana, 3 loyalty. It has +1, add red and green. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creatures. Okay, that's fine. It does rely on you having other cards in hand that you can cast with it. -1, create a 3/3 green Phyrexian beast creature token with Toxic 1. Decent. And -4, deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control as you activated this ability. So the important part to note about this ability is once you activate it, the damage is locked in. You are not getting Like, you can't pump your thing after you activate to get more damage, but you also can't get your opponent can't remove something to uh, decrease the damage you can deal with this. Okay, so, and it's probably worded that way because it's divided as you choose. So during the process of declaring targets, you have to, declare how you're dividing that damage. Um, I don't think this card is very good, actually. You have to be ahead on board for the -4 to be a really good ability. I mean, not ahead, but like you have to have a reasonable presence on board. Uh, a reasonably large creature. Otherwise, this is like a 4 mana. What's it called? Magic missile, or whatever that card is that you deal like 3 damage divided as you choose, which is not great. The -1 making a 3/3 is fine, but a 4 mana 3/3 with potentially future upside is like just okay. So it does protect itself with that 3/3, and then you can uptick it in future for the red and green mana. So accelerate into your really big boys. I think that's probably its primary use. I don't think that like quote unquote ultimate. It's not really an ultimate because yeah none of the completed ones from this set really have an ultimate in the traditional sense. No, Vraska does. Vraska does. Never mind. Some of them don't. But yeah, no, I think that this is a mediocre planeswalker. But a mediocre planeswalker is still great in limited because you can just make 3/3s forever, which is something. I don't like it, you know, personally, but it's still great in limited. Next up, we have a Vivisection Evangelist. This is a 5 mana that is 3, a white, and a black for a 4/4 Phyrexian Cleric with Vigilance and Corrupted. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, destroy target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. This card's great. This card is fantastic. 5 mana 4/4 with Vigilance is fine, and then if they have Corrupted, it's just an automatic 2-for-1. It's like, oh look, your biggest thing is gone. This card is amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, not much more to say about that. That's very good. It does sort of feel odd in the black white space because black white is I feel like it's more aggressive than this, but having this as a top end on a black white deck is not bad. It's not bad. Next up, we have Cinder Ravager. This is a 6 mana that is 4, a red, and a green for a 5/5 Phyrexian Warrior. Costs 1 less to cast for each permanent you control with an oil counter on it. With oil counters on it. It has Vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature in your opponent's control. Sorry, the reason I paused there is because I'm not sure, and I think it's probably not, or I think it probably is fine, but with oil counters on it could imply like plural, which means that you have to have 2 or more oil counters on a permanent for it to count for this, but I think they would have been more explicit with that. I think that as long as your permanent has an oil counter on it, it qualifies. I'll look at that in a minute, because that is a big difference for this card. Like, if you can have a single oil counter on things and they count for discounting this, then this can reasonably come down for like 3 or 4 mana, which is great. If you have to have multiple oil counters on your permanents for them to discount this is not coming down until turn 5 or turn 6. Okay? Because it's much less likely that you're going to keep those oil counters on your stuff and be able to play this aggressively. But as a creature, this is very solid. Right? A 5/5 with vigilance that pings down all your opponent's mites or whatever is very good. Yeah. Next up, we have Atraxa, Grand Unifier. This is a 7 mana 7/7 Phyrexian Angel. It's legendary. It is not red. It requires 1 green, 1 white, 1 blue, 1 black, and 3 of any color to cast. No red in that cost, so sorry, red decks. It is flying, vigilance, death touch, lifelink, Atraxa. Same old keywords. When Atraxa enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each card type, you may put a card of that type from among the revealed cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Reminiscent of Niv Mizzet Reborn. But this hits card types instead of multicolored. So there are fewer card types. Well, maybe not so much now, but a deck is not going to run as many card types as they're going to run, as you can run different colors. So this lists the number of the different card types. It's artifact, battle, creature, enchantment, instant, land, planeswalker, and sorcery. Yes, we have not seen battles yet. We will see them in like March of the Machines. This is a teaser card, so it's one of these things that's designed to get people talking, build hype for future sets. In this set, it's not really worth speculating on what battle winds up being, right? It's gonna be what it's gonna be, and if it's good, that's great. If it's not, oh well. But as we can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different card types. 7 different card types. As opposed to the 10 guilds, and then you're not necessarily going to be able to play all of them. One of the things about Niv was that like you could just play like removal in all the different colors and it was fine, right? It's going to be harder to diversify the different card types into different roles. It's possible. But I don't think, and then the difference between 7 and 5 is, well, 2 mana it's big, so probably not gonna spawn a constructed deck in the way that Niv did. Also because you can't bring to light for 7. There aren't 7 colors of mana in the game, so yeah. While it is similar to a card that has seen play in, sort of unique deck, it's probably not going to do the same thing and spawn that sort of a play style. Just because the support pieces do not exist for it in that way. And it's harder to diversify. In Limited, if you can play this card, you win. You straight up, you win. You get at least 2 cards to hand. Okay? This enters the battlefield, you get at least 2 cards, because you are going to hit a creature and a land. Maybe 3, because you have an artifact creature in your deck. Maybe 4 because you have a sorcery. So 7/7, boatload of keywords. All the keywords are good. You will that draws you at least 2, if not more. Is game winning. It is glorious. If your opponent still has removal on turn 7, they're, and there's not much that actually deals with this in this set. There's stuff that deals with it, but I guess white has all solid removal. But yeah, whatever. It's just very good if you can play it. But then you also have to be playing 4 colors, right? There is some fixing in this set, so you could just be running like a prophetic prism or 2 and get this out and one of the 2 color decks. Yeah. If you can play it, it's great. If you can't, but don't try to support this if it's not possible, right? Next up, we have Kaya, Intangible Slayer. This is a 7 mana planeswalker. Enters with 6 loyalty. It costs 3, 2 white, and 2 black. It has hexproof. Okay. +2, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Alright, that doesn't really do all that much. 0, you draw 2 cards, then each opponent may scry 1. That does a ton. And then -3, exile target creature or enchantment. If it wasn't an aura, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1 white spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. This card is ridiculous. That -3 ability is very good. Just eat their best thing and get a 1/1 copy of it. Hopefully it has decent text, but even if it doesn't, a 1/1 can block for this planeswalker, which has hexproof, which means the only way that they're going to be able to deal with it is by attacking it. The +2 is an inevitable game win, just draining your opponent consistently, and the 0 is incredible card advantage. The 0 is incredible card advantage. Draw 2 and your opponent scries 1. Who cares if your opponent scries 1? Yeah, just a very, very good card. Again, 7 mana, so it's going to be tough to play in Limited, but you can do it. Just play very controlling, very slow, very methodical. Next up we have Ovika, Enigma Goliath. This is a 7 mana, 6/6 legendary Phyrexian Nightmare with flying, ward 3, and pay 3 life. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create X 1/1 red Phyrexian goblin creature tokens where X is the mana value of that spell. They gain haste until end of turn. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Ward 3, pay 3 life is very close to hexproof on turn 7. Maybe it's a little bit less than hexproof. I mean, it's always a little bit less than hexproof, but it's close. The 6/6 flyer is already solid, and then the ability is like just make chumps, or if you have enough, make damage, right? You can just run them into people. A decent card. I'm thinking Limit is going to be a little too quick for this. I'm thinking this is the kind of card that was designed for Commander. Even though you can just play much, much stronger stuff in Commander. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if you can build a deck that you can reliably get to turn 7 with your life total and everything intact as a spell slinger deck, which is a lot to ask for. That is a lot to ask for. This is a very nice curve topper. Just a big old beater that comes down and says, basically, I win the game, right? Deal with this or die. Yeah. I have trouble seeing how this format is going to be slow, though. So that, to me, is a mark against a lot of these cards that are here. You know, this 7, these 3 7s, even the Cinder Slash Ravager, and the Vivisection Evangelist. Like, they are very strong. They do very, very powerful things. But I'm not sure how often you're going to be able to get to turn 5. You're going to be able to survive that long. To play the card and turn the corner. I mean, these cards look like they can turn the corner, but if you have to get there, and then they turn the corner. Just white and blue being so aggressive, even like black, red and green, the red-green archetype being a very aggressive archetype. I think the format's going to be quite quick. We'll see. We'll see, though. Obviously, I mean, probably somebody's played it, so we'll see if that is what it is. So, one last thing before we go, I'm going to click on this card and see if there's any rulings ahead of time to clarify whether or not how exactly this works. There are not. Well, I'm not a judge, so ask a judge if you run into it. I think most people will play it where if the creature has an oil counter on it, it's good enough, right? It counts for this thing to be discounted, but I don't know exactly how that's meant to work. Because the previous wording would have been with an oil counter on it. And that would have made sense to everybody, and it would have discounted for everything. With oil counters on it, could be interpreted to mean plural, right? Could be interpreted to mean it has to have 2 or more. Again, I think they would have been explicit with that if that's what they had meant, but I think this is ambiguous wording, and it's something that they should pay attention to, right? So, But that is the end of my set review for Phyrexia All Will Be One. I hope you all got something out of that. Again, if you have anything, any sort of differing opinions on some of these cards, feel free to share that in the comments. And if there's something maybe I missed, I noticed Battle. Don't mention it. Feel free to put that in the comments as well. So, without any further ado, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you next time with some actual gameplay of Phyrexia All Will Be One.